Test one, two, three. Okay, hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice 13 game uh, NFL slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? A very interesting slate today, so we have a lot of good games on this one. As for the games themselves, I think they're going to be pretty good. I do think the positioning on this slate is going to be a little bit tough today, but there's plenty of value available, and I think we can make some really good lineups on this one. So I do like the slate in general with some good games here. So first, we'll look at our quarterbacks. So the top ownership guys will be Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, and Justin Fields. They are a little bit cheaper, which is interesting. So Anthony Richardson, though, is one of my top plays. He's got a favorable matchup against Houston. He looks like he's going to have a solid opportunity to have a good game here. He's a little bit risky, but he's priced nice and fair, and that definitely gives him a lot of upside today. I do think that he's facing a team that does struggle against pass, so I think that's going to help him as well. He is kind of a running quarterback at times, so keep that in mind as well, but I don't think he's going to have too much opportunity for that in this particular game. Caleb Williams is going to have his first game against Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's defense does kind of struggle, though they are improved. I do think it's going to be a game where he's definitely going to have some opportunity to give himself a chance to show what he is. And so this is a very interesting spot for him. He's also pretty cheap, so that definitely helps as well. Jaden Daniels for Washington also has a fantastic match against Tampa Bay. This will also be a very interesting opportunity, but Tampa Bay's defense has been really bad against the pass, so this is going to give him a lot of potential on the slate. He's also a little bit cheaper than the other guys mentioned. And then lastly, Baker Mayfield. He definitely seems like he's primed to have a solid game here against Washington. I think either one of the quarterbacks in this particular game, have some potential. But I do think that Baker has some really good potential on this one, and Washington's one of the worst defensive teams in the game last season, so he's definitely going to have some upside as well. Looking at our running backs, we do have uh, some interesting ownership here with Rashad White, Alvin Kamara, and Devon Achane being the top ones. But Rashad White does look solid for Tampa Bay. I think this game is going to be somewhat high scoring, not much defense here between Tampa Bay and Washington. So to keep that in mind, even though Washington is going to be highly owned defensively, I think White is definitely a good play on the slate. He's got some nice potential to have a big year, and Washington has really struggled against the run. I also like Alvin Kamara quite a bit for New Orleans. Now he uh, has battled injuries in the past, and he has battled, the interesting offense that they run there in New Orleans. But he's definitely going to have some nice potential today against Colorado's weak defense, and so I think he's in a really solid position uh, when it comes to that. I do think that New Orleans is going to struggle to throw the ball though, so if they get behind, then he could get that could be a concern there. But overall, I think he's in a really good spot. Ken Walker also looks fantastic for Seattle against Denver. Now, Denver did have a rough season last year, but they're probably going to be somewhat improved. And I think Walker does have a lot of potential here, though he could be a little bit more of a better best play. But I do think he's a good person you could put in that flex position if you want to put a running back in there. And then Bijan Robinson. Oops, where'd he go? For Atlanta, he also looks very interesting today. He's really had some struggles last year, but he has some really good potential today with a decent matchup and some favorable price points. He's a little bit more expensive than the other guys I mentioned, but he's also got more upside as a result of that. But the ownership here: Rashad White, Alvin Kamara, Devon Akon, Kenneth Walker, Bijan Robinson. So lots of good options that are pretty going to be somewhat highly owned. Looking at the wide receivers, so we'll look at Los Let's see here. Where'd he go? Andre. uh, Isavas here for Cincinnati. He's going to be one of my favorite cheap plays. Now, he didn't play a ton last season, but when he did get some opportunities, he managed to score some fantasy points. He's definitely got a lot of potential today, as he looks like he's going to be one of the top uh, options for their for Joe Burrow, excuse me, during the season. So he looks like he's in a really good spot here. Uh, he's also just $3,000, which helps you pay up at other positions. Tyreek Hill, he is Tyreek Hill, and he's going to have an extremely favorable matchup against Jacksonville. So that gives him a lot of upside. He's definitely going to get double-digit fantasy points, and their defense there is going to be really, it's going to really struggle. He's definitely one of my favorite plays there. Drake London also in play for Atlanta. He's got some good upside in this one. He's been kind of a good play at times, and he can definitely score double-digit fantasy points. Though he does need to get as many of those targets in that he's going to get into some catches, but he's been pretty good at that. So I think he's a really solid price point, and he's got a really good upside type of game. And then we'll look at Jaden Waddle for Miami. Obviously, if you like Tua, then you're going to have some potential to utilize him. Tyreek Hill, obviously, going to be the more beneficial guy, but he's a great contrarian play and a very favorable matchup, so he's definitely somebody to consider there. We also like Chris Godwin for Tampa Bay, though I do think this game ends up being somewhat high scoring, but he definitely has had some potential here with some pretty solid, consistent play last season. Kirk for Jacksonville, also very interesting for against Miami. He's going to have some really sneaky upside today and a positive matchup, though it is a little bit high risk, high reward right now compared to some of the other options. We also like uh, Christian. I'm seeing. I said Kirk already. Rome Odunze for Chicago and DK Metcalf for Seattle as two kind of contrarian options on the slate. Looking at our tight ends, we do like Kyle Pitts the best. He's got a very favorable matchup against Pittsburgh, who struggled against the pass, and don't think they really did a lot to help there. He's not a must play, but it does appear to look like Atlanta has some nice potential today. So I think he's going to be a viable option here. Dalton Kincaid for Buffalo, also in play against Arizona. He's had some pretty good games at the end of last season, so he's definitely capable of that. And he doesn't even need a touchdown necessarily to pay off here because of his price point. Even though it's a little bit more expensive than Kyle Pitts, he's a little bit safer. Evan Ingram also looks solid for Jacksonville against Miami, though I'd probably got to stay away from him, uh, even though he does have a lot of upside because uh, Miami's defense is a little bit tougher than some of the other options. But he's definitely in play on the slate. But the ownership will be Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram, and Don Kincaid just the same. But not least, we'll look at our defenses. So Buffalo Bills. Um, and a very interesting spot here against Arizona. I do think that both these teams have some potential to score points today, but I think Buffalo is going to try to go out of their way to slow them down, and they definitely have that potential, though I do think they can get some scoring through the air, so keep that in mind. We also look at Houston. Oopsie. Where to go? Houston Texans. Uh, this is not an ideal matchup because I do like the uh, quarterback starting for the Indiana team, so I'm a little concerned. But they had some big games last year, and they're definitely capable of it with the talent. It's just a matter of getting those guys being in the right place at the right time. And they might be today, considering this game is early in the year. Looking at Seattle uh, Seahawks here against Denver, they definitely have some potential as well. They don't seem to have as much upside as some of the other options, but they have been good against the pass so far this season, so they're definitely worth a look. And they're going to be cheap, which helps as well because, I mean, all the defenses are cheap, but anyhow. With that said, guys, the ownership at this position, Houston, Atlanta, and Washington, I definitely think going with either Buffalo, Houston, or Seattle though, are the better options. So, with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. and have a nice day, guys. How do I feel about the Bucks quarterback? I mean, I like him. Tampa Bay does look like a decent um, team to go up against today. Let's see here. I mean, to go up with today from a fantasy perspective because Washington is definitely going to struggle here, and Baker's been solid. Um, at the end of last year, so I think he's definitely capable of some big games, and he looks like he's pretty motivated to do well. So that's what I would say about that. I would definitely look at that quarterback as a good play.